Welcome to the Biltmore Church podcast. Our church exists to glorify God by making disciples of Jesus who reach up, reach in, and reach out, and this podcast is a resource to hopefully help you do just that. Today, we are bringing you a special bonus episode of the podcast. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different, but very helpful. We're going to be talking about emotional health. And so wherever you are on your discipleship journey with Jesus, this should be a huge benefit to you. I think there's going to be something in here for everybody. It's going to be a great conversation. And to that point, I'm joined today by two amazing licensed Christian counselors. I really thought I was going to mess up the alliteration there. That's a hard thing to mention all in a row. We nailed it. So we've got Donna Gibbs and Kevin Wimbish with us today. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for being here. It's going to be fun. So quick introductions. Donna and Kevin are both co-owners of Summit Wellness Centers, which is a counseling center that offers real hope, practical help for life's hurts through the venues of professional Christian counseling. Also writing and speaking and consulting. There's a lot that goes into all of what both of you do. And you guys have years and years and years of experience in the mental health field. And you're also both members of our church, which makes it fun as well. And I think we'll ground our conversation in the context of the people of our church. So glad you guys are here. And today, here's what we're going to do. We're going to open the floor for you guys to give us 10 ways to improve our emotional health.
All right.
Very simple, very practical. I think it's going to be awesome. Just getting a sneak peek at some of the things you guys are going to be talking about. I'm excited to hear a lot of these as well. So before we get into those 10, maybe some opener questions just to get the ball rolling a little bit, setting the table for the rest of our discussion. I'd love to hear from both of you. Why is emotional health such an important part of the Christian life? And then why do you think it's something that the church should be talking about?
It's part of how God has made us, for sure.
Yeah.
I think we're getting better at it in terms of the macro church, in terms of talking about it. I grew up in the South, and so a lot of us grew up in the South, and so especially us guys who grew up in the South, we kind of stiff-arm that kind of thing,
right.
And so we can be afraid of it, thinking there's a weakness around it or that sort of thing. I think of Jesus as the lion and the lamb, and for a long time we kind of leaned on that lion side a lot, and I don't want to go all the way to the other side. That's happening in secular society too much, but I think we're getting better in terms of a balance with that. So it's part of who God has made us, an important part. Not the part. We don't want it to lead things, but it is an important part.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and well said. I think we think of these conversations as being a little fluffy
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah.
And yet they're essential because it
Yes.
is how God has wired us
Yeah.
in His image and with purpose and intention. And our emotions can be very productive
Yeah.
and purposeful, or they can get
Yeah.
us off the rails and ruin our lives.
That's right. Yes.
So
Yes.
I think it's such an appropriate conversation to
Yeah.
have, and in the church as a whole.
For sure.
We don't always have a lot of muscles in the big C church in doing
Right.
that. And so obviously it's part of our mission and vision to
Yeah.
get those muscles moving a little more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You guys both really affirmed and mentioned that it's our emotional health, our emotions are part of the way that God's wired us.
Yeah.
It's a part of that, and it's making me think about when we were talking about this episode beforehand, you both mentioned the idea that there's like 6 buckets. I think, Donna, is the way you phrased it. There's 6 different buckets that impact our well-being. So maybe if you can speak to what those are a little bit and why they matter, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. I've never thought of them as buckets
Maybe-
before. I think
ma-
that
maybe
was your
buckets
word.
is
but
my
I
language.
said,
That's
I can
awesome.
run with that. I can run with that. Kevin and I have both been doing this work for a long, long time. And many years ago, we decided to join forces. And when we did, we were very intentional in putting wellness in the name because we
Yeah.
value a whole person. Wellness, we are more than just our emotions. But so when I think of the buckets, I think of whole person care.
Right.
And that's really the approach that we take with Summit, because that seems to be how God has created us.
Yeah.
So if we're going to look at those buckets, they would be the emotional, those emotions that God has created us with the capacity to feel. and we want to maximize them and learn how to regulate them. But we're more than just our emotions. So then there's also the mental, and you and I have had conversations here on this podcast before about our thoughts and how our thoughts matter. I call it the most important conversation no one ever heard. And neuroplasticity. I love having those conversations, and it's crucial, but we're more than our brains and more than our thoughts also. So the next is the physical. And so that's our body, how we're sleeping, our nutrition, all of, and we could go on and on about that. But our body matters. It is the shell that God has given us in which we live out the calling. So that's part of that. The relational piece, who we are living life with and how we are relating with them, what that attachment and intimacy looks like, that matters, but we're more than our relationships. There's the vocational piece, the work we do, how we're living out, the time that we have, the abilities that we have, the spiritual gifts that we have, and if we're thriving in that, or if we're on the brink of burnout, all of that matters. But again, we're more than our work. And then last but definitely not least, this could have easily just been at the very front, would be the spiritual piece, the heart of who we are, our relationship with Christ or lack of, our intimacy with Him, our attachment with Him, and the impact on our life. All of those buckets matter. And if we just single into one of those, then we miss out on the emotional health of all of it.
Yeah, man, those are great. And those are educational guests here, all interconnected.
Yes.
You can't separate them all
That's
out.
right.
Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
So is there, I know we don't want to, like you said, we're more than all of those individually, but for the two of you, is there one in particular that seems to be the easiest that falls off the table for people or gets ignored, or is it different for everybody?
I think a lot of that will be context specific.
Yes.
In terms of professions or subcultures or that sort of thing. Some subcultures will value more the intellect, some will value more the physical, some will value more the spiritual, vocational. So it's just good for us to be aware of, what context are we in and what is getting reinforced, and then to the detriment of what else,
Yeah, and I think being aware that at any point, any of those could be ignored. And when I say ignored, it's mostly we're not intentionally ignoring anything. We're usually just unaware and passive in that particular area. And so that's why I think auditing all of those areas, just kind of having a rhythm of checking in about all of those areas. And at any given time, you're going to notice some imbalance because we're life this side of heaven. And just being able to accept that, but also lean into, I still want to be proactive and at peak as best as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great starting place for what you guys are about to lay out, because all of these 10 items fall into some of these spaces. And they overlap, obviously, but I think it's a good place to start. And I love that phrasing of auditing, trying to find balance in those areas. So a lot of awareness and thinking through how they connect to one another. You can't isolate them all out and expect everything to be going great. So if you guys are good, we can jump in
Sure.
Let's do
and
it.
give some helpful tips. So we've got 10. Donna, I think you're up first here.
Okay. And the first one on the list is getting a full physical and paying attention to the physical implications. And I'm glad that this is first on the list because in the therapeutic realm, this is where I always start.
I was
Because there's
fascinated by that, by the way.
Yeah, there's some things that could be working against us that we are not aware of.
Yeah.
And until you investigate that, you don't know what you don't know. You can't correct what you don't know. And so when we were talking about emotional health, most of the time people are referring to depression and anxiety and symptoms of distress that are like that. There are so many things that could go a little off, physically speaking.
Yeah.
So things like vitamin D, so common to have a deficiency with that. You're going to see depression in all likelihood with that. Iron levels could be deficient. Magnesium could be deficient. Thyroid could be hyper or hypo.
Yeah.
There could be heart-related issues, hormones off of balance. I mean, these seem like minor things, but in the emotional health world, they're big things because they really can be game changers. And you can use all the tools, and you can use all the other things that we're going to talk about. But if you've got a vitamin D deficiency, you're still going to be beaten up against that. And so having a full physical, it's one of the first things that we ask. And if you haven't had a full physical in the last 12 months, but you're having some symptoms of distress, I'm always going to say, okay, let's get that.
Yeah.
Let's explore that first.
That's cool. It's a great starting place. Now, I'm guessing a lot of that is like just, basic blood work, the other things that go into a physical, and your doctor can, not all of it's, blood work related, but that your doctor can turn around and help interpret that.
Absolutely. Now, some of those things you have to specifically ask for. They're not necessarily on the basic panel, but just knowing what you need to ask for.
Yeah.
And if you've listened to this podcast and you're having some anxiety, then
Boom,
I
boom,
probably
boom.
need to check vitamin D, iron, magnesium,
Yeah.
just some of these basic things. And when we're talking about the physical, no, this is not necessarily related to a full physical, but our nutrition is part of that. And our nutrition, you eat junk food, you're going to experience some junk emotion stuff. It really does impact our emotional regulation and the amount of processed foods versus eating the foods that God has made. I always think if it doesn't have a label on it, it's probably his idea. And your emotional well-being is going to be more regulated because your brain is an organ of the body, and your nutrition matters to your body, so it matters to your brain.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we were joking around a little bit before we recorded, Kevin, about your nutrition.
I was just thinking about that, my cheat meals.
your intensity with your nutrition plan.
He's intense.
Yeah, I love it.
With all respect, too.
Yeah, it's disciplined for sure. So I imagine with some of this stuff we were talking about, nutrition in particular, it's kind of either a downward spiral or upward spiral. And what I mean is you kind of, you're eating a bunch of junk, you feel bad.
Yeah.
Then you just want to eat junk because you
Yes.
feel bad. And
Yes.
or vice
and eating
versa.
junk makes you feel good for a
short amount
small
of time.
sliver of time.
Yeah.
Then it makes you feel worse, so
Yeah.
you're winning the battle but losing the war.
100%. But
Well,
does that
when
work in reverse too with eating well and
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what does that look like for you? I mean, I'm sure you've seen the effects of
It's
that.
pretty
If you're that
detailed.
disciplined, you know what some of those
Yeah,
are. Yeah.
it's pretty detailed, so I won't go into all the details. But, just like Donna was saying, things that God has made, I mean, that's huge. And that's hard for country boys like me. I mean, you can tell in how I talk. But that's hard for country guys. I mean, I grew up on fried stuff and Mountain Dew and all that kind of stuff. And my cheat meals, I will go in some fried stuff, but that's atypical, once a week. But just a lot of greens, a lot of good meat. A lot of good things that God has made, for sure. Yeah. And I typically do smaller increments. I'll eat multiple times a day, and I've been doing that for a long time. And but I'll do smaller increments throughout the day. So that's just something I found that if I ate a big lunch and then 2 o'clock came, I was ready to take a nap, and so I had to rework some things. So smaller increments, healthy stuff. I always have healthy stuff on me in my bag or whatever. So that if I'm hungry, I don't feel the temptation to go to get some junk. I've got a healthy something. And I encourage people to do that. That's just one practical tip. Always have something good on you.
Incredibly practical.
Yeah.
Love that. Love that.
Shopping on all the outside of the grocery store, the outside periphery of
Oh,
the
there you go.
all the processed food is in the middle. So just shop on the outside.
Love that.
Yeah.
Just do a ring around the outside. Don't even bother. Yeah. Frozen section seems like maybe the most dangerous place with all this, but I love it. That's great. That is I was very fascinated by that. I love that we started there because I think that's something that a lot of people wouldn't have thought about. I wouldn't have thought about that as a great starting point for a lot of this. So excellent. Number one there.
Yeah. And as we get older, that gets more and more important. My son can eat anything and keep on running and lifting and whatever.
Yeah.
And I feel it when I don't eat so well. So
For sure.
And we live in these bodies that are going to betray us in some ways, disease processes.
Yeah.
And those are it's just part of living this side of
Right.
heaven. So we have to be able to respond to those things and treat the invisible.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Love that. All right, we're off to a good start there. Number one, Kevin, you're up
All right.
with our second tip here.
Okay. So I think about this as the coffee filter, and this is cultivating a spiritual or a Christian worldview.
Okay.
And so if you think about our practice, Christian values clinical excellence. And so a lot of pastors will ask me this because, in terms of church and mental health, there's been some difficulties along the way over the decades. You know, and so pastors will say, okay, how do you make those two things dance together? And so I use the coffee filter. I like coffee. And so I'd say take the Bible, and that's the coffee filter. And then I read a ton of stuff, listen to a ton of stuff, all that kind of thing, and but filter it through the Bible, filter it through what does the Bible say about this? What are biblical principles about this thing? And not only for counseling, but in our day, 100 years ago, you might have had 10 philosophies in your town or city to contend with. And now we have thousands, you know, and so they're always coming out of social media, YouTube, whatever.
Yeah.
And so we got to stay in our Bible, and it's kind of like building this pair of glasses through which we see everything, you know. They're kind of two coins of that, how I think about it. So think about us who've been in the church for a long time, that sort of thing. One thing we have to watch out for is we can just ingest all this information. And I call it, unfortunately, sometimes we can become like a spiritual fathead if we're not careful, you know. And so we can know all this good stuff and say all this good stuff, but then treat our wives poorly and our kids poorly and not live it out. And so that's one encouragement, caution I have to believers is don't just keep learning a lot of stuff and not applying it. Slow it down. I've told people, and I've done this plenty of times, I'm re-listening to 2 books right now that I've listened to a couple times, you know, because ultimately we're going to live this stuff out and not just be able to articulate it, you know. And then on the other side of that, we have to watch out for the world's infiltration in terms of our mindset.
Right.
You know, words now mean different things than they meant 20 years ago, and so we got to watch out for that. But one thing I've seen over the years is the in love thing. And that one's creeped into a lot of Christians' mindsets in terms of, well, if I'm not in love with him or her anymore, then that means we're good to divorce and God's cool with that and all that kind of stuff. I've seen that so much, and it just breaks my heart. And so we got to realize things like that and plenty of other things are worldviews, not Bible views, you know. And so I just encourage me and everybody, all of us, to be honest with ourselves and don't, you know, we can't just say, well, God's cool with this. Well, God's cool with what he says he's cool with in the Bible, and we can't just make stuff up and add to it, you know, and just being honest with ourselves of, okay, is he Lord, or am I trying to do my own thing and make myself Lord? You know, so that's the other side of that coin in terms of biblical worldview. The coffee filter filtered all through the Bible.
Yeah, I love that analogy. It reminds me, as you guys both know, the way that Pastor Bruce says it very often, if I got to make sure I can get the terminology right here, is like when me and God disagree, he's right, I'm
That's
wrong,
right, yes.
and by God's grace I will change. That's the filter.
That's great. That's the filter.
That's the filter of
Yes.
saying, okay, I've got to filter this through
Yes.
your language there, a biblical worldview,
Yes.
so that I'm not allowing myself to be influenced too much by the
That's
world.
right.
Yeah, that's great.
In marriage, too, that's one thing I encourage young couples. Julie and I came up with that one before we got married. All right, whatever the Bible says. I mean, I was training to be a marriage and family therapist. She had a much better family than I did. And so we both came with different strengths, but we said, whatever the Bible says, we submit to that. It doesn't really matter what we think about whatever, you know, and that's helped us a ton over the years.
That's great.
Just to add to that, our culture right now has a lot to say about mental health, and a lot of it is off the rails.
Yeah.
TikTok is creating its own culture of pathologies, and
Yes.
I think that coffee filter is so crucial. I mean, we're doing a podcast right now about emotional health, but it's a dime a dozen, and you get a lot of feedback out there,
Yes.
and it's not necessarily going to be grounded in truth.
That's right. Yeah.
That's a really
That's
helpful
right.
thing to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because we're talking about emotional health doesn't mean whatever you see out there doesn't necessarily mean it's grounded.
Right.
That's right.
Physically.
Use that
Yeah.
coffee filter in
Yeah.
those settings.
Yeah. And if it
'Cause you're
always
gonna
makes
need
you
it.
feel good and strokes the ego, that's a caution light.
Yeah, big red flag.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Love it. All right, you're up. Number
Next
3.
up, I was hoping Michelle would be here for this because
Yeah.
she's kind of the physical fitness guru,
Yeah.
and we're going into exercise, which is like a taboo word, oftentimes with someone who is struggling with mental health symptoms because they
Interesting.
don't feel like exercising. So my challenge because exercise is so important.
Yeah.
God made us, as we just look back to God's design, He made us with joints and muscles. We are designed to move. And so it is part of our greatest tool for mental health, too. When our body moves, particularly at that 30-minute mark or so, there's some amazing things happening in the brain with our neurotransmitters, and there's a release of serotonin and norepinephrine and dopamine and the endorphins. Those are the happy chemicals, and lots of research indicates that exercising is at least as effective as an antidepressant. That does not mean come off your antidepressant.
Right.
That means, hey, do you want to add another med without the same side effects? Hey, this is a great addition to move. But I'm also aware that people are resistant to the word exercise because oftentimes if we're struggling in distress, particularly if that distress is depression, we just don't have a want to. The apathy is there, the lack of motivation is there, and I always say, okay, let's just accept that is there and you don't want to. We're just going to do the next right thing, trusting the process, trusting God has made me this way, and afterwards I will be glad that I did. And focusing on the incentives of it, that, this is going to be good for my brain, even being able to imagine it being good for your brain, and trusting that there is very likely, there's going to be a lift. The other piece of this that I think, as we're looking at all of these buckets, I think the more that you can hit more than one bucket at a time, the better. So if there's someone listening and they're wrestling with some depression and they don't want to exercise, if I could wave my wand, it'd be, hey, how about you text a friend and you all go walk on the Acosta Trail together, and then you hit 2 buckets at the same time.
Yeah, because now we're in the relational side as well.
Yes, and accepting the fact, you're not really going to want to. No more than you want to go text that friend.
Yeah.
It's just part of it. That's just part of the symptoms of it. But say, these are just my symptoms. I'm going to do the next right thing, trusting that if I do this God's way, movement is His way, and I'm just going to comply. I'm just going to submit with His design and trust Him in it.
That's great.
Yeah, most mornings I don't want to work out. But I make myself, because I know the future gain and how it's going to be super helpful, so just reminding ourselves. I tell people, if you've not done anything in a while, don't start big. That, in my opinion, is one reason the gyms are full in January, not February. People start way too big. And so I'd say if you've not done anything, just walk out of your house 5 minutes, 3 times a week.
Yeah,
and
sustainable.
Sustainable, yes. And then make it 7, 2 weeks after that, and then make it 10. And then you might get some little dumbbells. Or even before that, you might do 2 push-ups and add it to the walking. Slow, steady, incremental building is what's helpful over time, not making these huge... I've not done anything, but now I'm going to go to the gym 7 days a week for an hour. It's not going to happen for more than 2 weeks, maybe 3.
Yeah, that requires a lot of discipline.
Slow, steady, incremental build is how I've seen success in that arena.
That's really helpful. So I think the way I'm thinking about what you're talking about, especially when you don't want to, is that you just need the want to. I want to do it.
Yes.
And you just gave a great example of a starting place. Any other simple ways that somebody can start a sustainable exercise rhythm, even if they just want to?
I think focusing on the wins, like you're going to be sharper with your work cognitively. You're going to be sharper. You're going to feel less stress. It's going to attack that cortisol. But then in practical ways, some people are gym people, and that's the easiest way for them. But I would say if you're wrestling with some mental health symptoms, everything's going to be a little bit harder. And so doing that with some accountability, saying, hey, friend, will you meet me there at whatever time? I'm not a gym rat. That's more difficult for me to carve out time, and so maybe it's carving out a space in your home, or getting a subscription to something like a Beachbody or something like that, and just picking something that is sustainable, and that's the key.
It is.
Wherever you start, letting it be sustainable, and even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes. You may just notice a little bit of lift that gives a little bit more incentive the next time that I remember this, and write it down. Hey, that was nice. It's a reminder.
And give yourself an attaboy in your brain of when I feel really bad and groggy and allergies in Western North Carolina and whatever, and I make myself work out, then I'll tell my brain, good job, man, that was awesome.
Yeah,
you
got to recognize that. I did it. Even if it was the 5-minute walk, I did it.
That's right.
That's great. Very great. Thank you guys for sharing on that one. I think that's an incredibly important one. And like you said, the science is there,
The science is there. Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot to that. All right, you're up.
All right, the next one I think about is washing our brains.
Okay.
And so think about, we're like fish swimming in this dirty water in terms of the world and society and all that kind of stuff. And so it's important. I mean, we get stuff pumped in our brains all the time, and screens and billboards and whatever else. And so it's important. You can tell I'm about cadences and practices and all that kind of stuff. And so it's important for us to, as Paul says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind, Romans 12:2. And so when we think about unhelpful thoughts, those often are repetitive, anxious thoughts, depressive thoughts. I mean, marketers know if I tell people this thing a certain amount of time, and emphatically enough, they're going to believe it, and so Paul's conversations in the Word are about renewal. It's a repetitive thing. And so I encourage people to create a practice of what am I thinking about? So just 2 times a day, here's a practical, easy thing to do. 2 times a day, what am I thinking about, and is that helping me? Because we let a lot of stuff roll around in our heads that might not need to be there. And who knows where it even came from with screens and social media and all that kind of stuff, So look at it. Number one, we got to create the practice, sit along on your phone, sticky notes, whatever, on your computer. What am I thinking about? Is that helping me? If it is, awesome. If it's not, redirect it. If you don't know whether or not it's helping, take it through, is it helping me love God and love others more? You can ask a lot of other questions, but bottom line, is it helping me do those things? And a lot of anxious, depressive, dark thoughts don't. They kind of make us kind of cower away, from him and from others. And so take it through that filter. I tell people, keep telling yourself the truth until you believe it. I've had to do that plenty of times in life. I've had my own wrestling match with mental health stuff over the years. And so it's like the guy in the New Testament who had a kid who was sick. And he said, Lord, I believe, and help my unbelief, And so, we can believe to this kind of capacity, but then we'll walk through some significant difficulties. And then, okay, now we got to believe to this capacity, And I'm a fan of being honest with God and preaching the gospel to ourselves over and over and over, and being intentional about that. I encourage people, I do it in the morning. I find it's best. A lot of people do it at night, whenever. The key is repetition, just like we talked about exercise. The key is repetition. Just keep putting good things in our brains so that we are, cleaning up that fish. We're washing. Sorry to mix metaphors, but we are washing the brain. And so put Bible in your head every morning. I'll listen to different sermons. I listen to one by Joe B., who comes here a lot. Right now this morning it was. And just something good in there, because you never know what a day's going to bring, and then with that, you never know what a day's going to bring. And so just calibrate your mind to, I don't know what this day's going to bring. And so ultimately, I'm going to conduct myself in a way that honors him. I respect myself, whatever this day's going to bring. And just calibrating the mind in the morning, I find is super helpful. And then get up and do it the next day and the next day.
Consistency.
And when we don't feel like it, all right, Lord, I don't feel like this, but I know I need it, and I'm going to do it, not just to check a box, because that's not helpful. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to pray my heart catches up. Yeah,
that's great.
So good, because our brain is going to be washed by something.
For
either
sure.
the destructive thoughts or truth. I always think of our brain as a computer. We have to be the software inputting truth. Our brain's just going to respond. And the brain can change. We don't have to stay stuck. But I think this is one of the areas that we're most likely to be passive in, because we can't see our thoughts. We're hardly even aware of our thoughts until we really take that time to audit it, just as you're describing. What a great way to describe that.
One of the things I found when I started doing this is I didn't realize how much my thoughts were unhelpful, how frequently, until you start inventorying, and then you're like, whoa, I did not know this was a problem, but it is. And then it allows you to start going through those. So you mentioned when you're doing that practice, redirecting a thought if it's not helpful. So what does that look like for you guys to redirect that thought? Because it's not, I don't personally think it's that effective just to say, nope, I'm not going to think about that.
It's not. Don't think about this table. I'm thinking about the table.
That's all you can think about, right? So how do we redirect?
So I think about it, let's take marriage, for example. If somebody is feeling some kind of negative way about their spouse, they can really slow it down. Think about Matthew 7. He said, look at the log in your own eye before the speck in your brother's eye. I tell people when they're asking me about marriage stuff, if you don't do anything else, do that. But then if we start feeling this way about our spouses, then if we slow it down enough, we can start realizing, we're not giving them the benefit of the doubt. We're assuming negative intent. We're assuming they don't care or don't love us or whatever, And then, sometimes you need to have conversations about things, that sort of thing. But, first, okay, Lord, what's the log in my eye first? Have I been approaching situations with that other person in an unloving manner? What am I doing that's not helping the situation?
Right.
Am I assuming this is going to be a conflict, and so I walk in with the gloves up? I walk in already on guard before we even talk about things, and they see me on guard, so they're on guard.
Yeah.
You can do that in parenting. You can do that with colleagues. If you get in a bad place with colleagues, then we start reading their emails like, okay, there she goes again, there he goes again, versus, okay, I'm going to give him or her the benefit of the doubt. There's an interesting psychological term called the fundamental attribution error. And what that says is when others misstep, we assume some kind of negative character trait or they're out to get us or whatever. When we misstep, we say, I was hungry or tired, or we give ourselves a grace, but we don't give others grace.
Right.
And so just people knowing that and say, okay, I'm not giving this person the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they're tired or they're sick or stressed or whatever, So those are some practical ways.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, number 5, you're up.
Next up, victory journaling. Anyone who listening who might have been one of my clients is probably laughing right now because
I was just talking about it again.
I make a big deal about victories because, Kevin, I think you were probably the first place that I heard this, and you didn't work. I'm going to butcher how you worded it. But something like the difficult things that we go through in life are like Velcro. They stick with us, the hard things.
Yeah.
The victories are more like the Teflon. They don't stick. And so when I'm with a client, and if they're there with me, they're automatically going through something difficult.
Right.
Many of my clients, I'd say most of my clients are moving through some kind of pretty intense trauma. No one has to be reminded what's hard. It's ever present. You don't have to be reminded about that. But what we do have to be reminded of is, where is it that I see God's hand, evidence of his hand? If every good and perfect thing is from the Father above, then I want to make much of it. Our tendency is to make much more of the hard than we do of the evidence of his hand, because another area where we're passive, we're struggling so much to just survive whatever we're dealing with that we don't even hardly notice. And victories are sometimes the most unsuspecting things that you wouldn't necessarily know to be thankful for, things that you would never in any other context see as a victory.
Yeah.
I'm reminded in my own life, there was a time in which I spent 3 months in a hospital, on a hospital bed, physical battle of my life. And one of my highlighted victories, every day I recognized this amazing cushion that they brought in. I don't even know where they got this thing from. But I never had bed sores, ever, which was remarkable. And so I fixated on things like that, because that is how you move through suffering, when you acknowledge where God's hand is at work in the middle of it. So literally, my sessions, I'd say 90% of the time, I start with, okay, what are your victories?
Yeah.
Because I know there's hard stuff there,
Yeah.
and we're going to get to it. But I want to make sure we have room to be able to acknowledge where God is working. And when you have a rhythm of writing those down in the beginning, there comes a point at which you don't even have to write it. Your brain knows to notice it. And that's regulating emotions.
Yeah.
When I'm telling the whole story,
Yeah.
we often get stuck in pain because we are only telling a part of the story. I think partial truth, partial healing. We have to be able to see the rest of the story, and it might mean slowing it down and looking. And then as you train your brain to do that, it's not as hard to look for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can think of clients over the years who've said, ugh, every time I ask that, like, it's hard for me to find those. But then they get into a rhythm. I don't even have to ask. As soon as they walk in, you want to know my victories?
Yeah,
I've got them
here it
written
is.
down. And we get to celebrate that.
Yeah.
And not because of anything puffy for them, but because that is evidence of God working through their suffering and their pain.
Man.
So that's a game changer, I think. And if somebody's struggling, I'd say, put that on your list.
Yeah.
Pretend I'm asking you in the most annoying way.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah. One of the things I read recently about imposter syndrome, with overlaps a little bit with this, is that imposter syndrome is really good at basically taking credit for all your victories and then blaming you for all your failures. And that the practice that you're describing helps people to acknowledge those victories.
Yes.
And not chalk them up to, luck or somebody else or whatever, but saying like, no, this was even if it wasn't something that I did, this is something to celebrate.
Right. And it takes us to praise and to worship, because truly these are, if there's anything, like if I'm responding in a way that wouldn't have been my norm, if I notice something came alive in Scripture and I haven't even wanted to be in the Word, or if I just noticed I opened the Bible and I noticed something there that spoke to me. Okay, that's a victory if you haven't been in there in 6 months because you've been angry at God about something. And that changes things. But it's much easier to acknowledge a victory when you see the author of it. It's not you. This is not just the work that you're doing. It's not all about you, because that's not sustainable. But he is. He doesn't get weary.
Yeah. Man, that's so helpful. All right, number 6.
Let's see, Band of Brothers.
Yeah.
So this one's meant a lot to me for 25, 26 years. So I was discipled in college by a guy named Blair, and we're still good friends now. Our discipleship group, we still have calls. We've got one Friday. We go away once a year and have a retreat, and we do a 2 or 3 hour hot seat. Each person is pretty intense, but it's so good. And so that's one. So I work with a lot of men, and I've told our Connect group, guys, we have a harder time with this than ladies, typically. And so guys, I'm a bit old school. You have a band of brothers. Ladies, you have a band of sisters. I just think it's good to do it that way.
Yeah. Good to clarify. Yeah.
Yes, in terms of your inner circle. And so whether you're 40 or 14 or whatever, we become like the people we spend time with. It doesn't matter how old we are, and so especially our inner circle and the people we're allowing to influence us. And so with guys, I encourage guys, develop those relationships. You can talk about football some and hunting and whatever, and I'm into sports and working out and all that. Don't let it stay there for 2 years. You can start there and that sort of thing. But in fact, I kind of coach a lot of guys on, okay, how do you even do it? And so I'll tell them, man, let's say you're walking in the foyer of your church sometime, and here's an acquaintance there, and you've gotten to know him, you've talked about football and fishing and whatever else and that sort of thing. But then you might just say, yeah, it was a tough work week this week. If he switches it to football, he's probably not ready to go there yet.
Yeah.
Or he might say, man, thanks for saying that. I'll pray for you with that. Yeah, mine's been a little stressful too. You're kind of going in the swimming pool, and you go in the 1 foot and the 2 foot and the 30 feet, all that kind of stuff.
Build trust.
Yeah. Somebody's got to go first and take a little bit more risk, and often, especially with guys, the guys will meet them there for sure. One other thing I tell guys is, like when you're in a Bible study or Connect group or that sort of thing, don't just leave it on the spiritual and theoretical principles out here. Like, here's what this verse would say to this thing in general. Say, here's how I'm wrestling with this verse in my own marriage. Here's what I'm finding. Here's what I'm learning, that sort of thing. I encourage people to give other people permission to ask you about things, to even call you out on things, That's that Proverbs 27:17, iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And, there's some sparks sometimes that come when iron is sharpened, it's sharpening each other. So ask for that, hey man, I'm wrestling with this. I'm working on this. God has sanctified me on this. I need you to ask me about it, Get to know each other in your real life and not just in a class or on a call or whatever. Because I can talk a good game, but it's very effective when Blair sees me with Julie and my kids, And my son has grown up around Scout, his son, and just spent time with him, went to Carowinds, all that kind of stuff. And so our relationships can't just be self-report, because I can make things sound really good. We need to see each other in action, and that really helps us.
That's where it's real.
Yeah. And then, a lot of times, especially as guys, we wait until the wheels fall off and then reach out for help, And so I say cultivate the relationship so you can do preemptive strikes. What I mean by that is, if you notice me like talking off key or starting to say a certain thing or whatever, we want to know each other enough so that you can say, Kevin, that's a little off, or, whatever.
Yeah.
We want to be able to say something to each other before we blow everything up.
Yeah.
In order to do that, we've got to have real relationships to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's great.
So practicals on that are connect group, small group, men's group, women's groups, get to know each other's families, get to really be around each other, go hunt, play ball, to work out, whatever, do some real life stuff together too. So you can see each other, and God can use us to sharpen each other.
Yeah, and you're not going to fall into that very often.
It won't
without
happen.
effort.
It won't just
You've got to
happen.
make time for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, like when I talked about the calls I have with these guys. I mean, two are pastors, one's a counselor, and the other guy's a business owner, and you know me. And so none of us have time for this. I heard it a long time ago. We really make time for what's important, And so if you look at our checking account and our calendar, you see what's important to us. Yeah.
That's
It won't
great.
just happen.
Yeah, man, that's a very helpful and love it. Okay.
It's a natural bridge for the next one.
Yeah.
And it's funny how you can kind of see our specialties. Kevin is marriage and family
Yeah,
systems
yeah.
and all of that, and I come from a more of a individual lens of mental health. So the next one up is addressing loneliness, and so what Kevin has described is the goal. But we've got many people who are wrestling with depression or anxiety, and they are living a very isolated life. Either because they feel unworthy of being around others, or they feel nervous about how others will receive them. Maybe it's social anxiety or what have you. And it's a real struggle for people. And so when I think of practical ways to get from point A to point B, a band of brothers is the ideal, and that is God's design. But how do I just get out of the house?
Yeah.
And that's a real issue. I mean, particularly since COVID. I remember during COVID having a couple of people who said to me, "Man, I was designed for this," because that's how they preferred to live in that isolation. But then breaking back out of that and assimilating back into life, it still remains challenging for a lot of people. And so I think of those, just because we've worked with so many of them, one-on-one, and maybe we start virtually in the beginning because it's difficult for them to even come in person. And so for some of those people, addressing loneliness might mean starting with a counselor, and that's your first step.
Right.
But as we were talking about before this podcast, I'm actually also a fan of serving. I think when we're struggling, and you referenced this just a few minutes ago too, when we're struggling emotionally, our tendency is to turn inward.
Yes.
We're not really meaning to, it's just where we go.
Yeah.
And when we can turn outward and serve someone else in some capacity, for a moment we get a break from that. And we also get some perspective, which tells us, oh, everybody's hurting in some way. I don't sit on a special corner that no one else has. I also think, and for those who might be listening, maybe they've served in a recent community serve day or something like that, and you may notice when you're serving, especially in a formal capacity like that or with an organization, there's some structure built in. It makes it easy. Conversation will be a little bit easier because it's purposeful. There's a project focused. Many people with social anxiety really wrestle with the superficial conversations. It's just exhausting for them. And so I would say to that person, okay, loneliness is not your friend. This is exacerbating your symptoms. But how about we try something that involves serving so that there's a little bit more of a structure. It gives you some predictable conversations. You automatically start to meet people. And we were also talking about my recent trip to Ukraine. You go on a mission trip, you go overseas, you go into a dark place like that. Boy, you get to know people really fast.
you do.
And so the other option could be, hey, let's just throw ourselves in, rip the Band-Aid.
Yeah.
And you're going to have an instantaneous band around you. Probably by like day 2.
Yeah, it won't take long.
You know?
Yeah.
So, but I think overall, just recognizing this is not my friend. Me escaping into a dark bedroom, even if it's just that you're in your home and you have a family that is there, and you're isolating most of the time in your bedroom. Okay, then first step is we're going to come out an extra percentage of time that day.
Yeah.
And if your inclination is just to communicate with people on social media, then I would say let's take a step and make a phone call to a friend. Or if you're doing the phone calls, but face-to-face is difficult, I'd say, okay, then let's go on a walk with someone where you're side by side. You're not even having to look them in the eye, but you can walk side by side, exercise together.
Yeah.
But I think it's a big deal. I even think about recently a huge study, the I might butcher this, Global Human Flourishing Study.
Yeah.
It's like Harvard and Baylor and Gallup all combined with over 22 countries, over 200,000 participants, and the seeking out what is it that allows a human being to flourish across cultures.
Yeah.
And part of what they came to is the top things that they came to is religious involvement. And we would know that that means centered around Christ and with his people, probably not just through a screen.
Right.
Community engagement, meaning you are rubbing arms with others. Naturally, you're probably serving other people. You are living shoulder to shoulder with people in your community. And the third was meaningful and purposeful work, which you can get to in a little while. But just a reminder, you're not going to flourish in isolation. You will have mental health symptoms as long as you are planted on an island you were never designed to be on.
Very helpful. Love it. Well, that feeds you right into number 9.
Yeah. So we've talked about spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, relational, and different kind of capacities. We'll talk about vocational.
Yeah.
So one thing I really love and am passionate about is just helping leaders, and because you help a leader, you help a lot of people because they lead a lot of people, and so that can be of a business, of a church, of a family, whatever. So in terms of the leader side of the vocational consideration, I encourage leaders to be really clear on your values. What are you about, and be clear on a philosophy of leadership. Like if somebody asks you a question, what is a good leader? Have an answer.
Yeah.
So that's helpful. That makes us really wrestle with some good concepts, and being clear on your set of values. We have something at Summit called the Summit House, and we know that if we fail on everything else, we can't fail on this stuff, and so that's a good first step. Have the values. Kind of a fail we can get into if we're not careful is we put them up on the wall on a pretty whatever, and then don't look at them or talk about them once a year or whatever.
They disappear.
They disappear, yeah. So to that note, I tell people don't make them too complicated. Make them so that you can memorize them, so don't have 50 of them or whatever, because who can do that, Have 5 or 10 at the most, whatever. Lace them through regular conversations, look for opportunities, affirm when people are living those things out. Talk about those things, how they show up in different capacities. That's a very important thing. So being clear on our values, living in sync with our values, confessing and saying when we don't. This is one thing. So good leadership is good leadership, whether it's in a family or a church or business or whatever. And so something I've told folks in our Connect group forever, when your kids are old enough, level with them of, hey, here's the good godly principle, and I didn't live that out, and I'm sorry. And I'm going to try to work on it. This is still the good godly principle, and what that does, number one, it points to him as the hero and not us.
Right.
It lets them know we're being sanctified. If we don't do that, because we're not going to perfectly live out these things all the time, then people are going to say, well, you told us all this, and now you're doing all that, and so you get the hypocrite thing there.
Right.
And so that's one thing I encourage leaders to do, whether it's an organization or family or whatever. Here's the goal, here's the value, the vision, whatever. I messed up. Here's how I'm correcting course. Take full ownership of it. I messed up, not because of whatever. I like the extreme ownership thought process and philosophy. So that's on the leader side. On the, let's say if you're an employee or a contractor, that sort of thing, make sure the leadership and the organization is in sync with your values and doesn't ask you to do anything that's out of sync with your values.
Right.
Because even if they seem like small things, if you say small yeses to things that are wrong, it's like this chisel just chiseling away at who you are, and do that for 20 years, you won't know who you are at the end of that. So just some practicals as well. There's an old leadership coach, Dan Sullivan. He calls these referability habits.
Okay.
And they sound like grandma's wisdom. But, a lot of good stuff. That's the reason grandma had it. Say please and thank you.
Okay, yeah.
Finish what you start. Do what you say you're going to do. And be on time. And so, again, they're not rocket science.
Yeah.
I've worked on those things for 20 years, and they're super helpful. They're super practical. If you notice, what they do is they communicate, I respect you, I respect your time, I value you, and they help you know you can trust me to do what I say I'm going to do, and I'm going to be faithful to what I say I'm going to do. So those are just some super practical things. Under promise and over deliver. It's easy to overpromise and underdeliver, And so that's one thing, just a practical tip is underpromise, overdeliver is one thing I encourage people to do. Focus more on substance and then style.
Okay.
Style's easy. There's a ton of people with style online who make everything sound awesome, and it's probably terrible. A lot of it is. So focus on the substance and then the style. So that's a practical mindset in terms of work. Some other practical things are, I told my kids this a long time ago, and I think it applies to when they were little, and it applies to us as well. You control your tech, or it's going to control you, for sure. This is not a neutral relationship. There are people way smarter than me with a lot more money behind this, programming it so that I look at it all the time. So even in the workplace, we have to be mindful of how we use phones and tablets and watches and I encourage people, don't let the notifications just come in all the time. Silence that thing when you're in a meeting. Because if I do this when I'm talking to you, that sends you a signal that I'm prioritizing this over you. Even if I'm not trying to do that, if I'm looking at my phone or that sort of thing. Healthy compartmentalization. Don't always just have your email going. And don't always be available. If you're working on something that's it takes you some deep thought. Don't have pings and notifications just going all the time.
That'll destroy that.
It does. Yeah, there's a myth of multitasking, and most of the research is saying we can't really do it. It's like skipping a pebble on some water. It's just kind of, they call it task switching, is how they're describing it. We're just a rock just going like this. We never go deep. So set boundaries around those things. I'm going to check my emails and texts this many times a day, and I'm going to do some more deep work during this hour, not have all these distractions. Principle of the Sabbath is the last thing I'll say. Okay. Just having a 24-hour time, where you don't do work stuff. I mean, I still read stuff and busy around the house, and I think it was Louis Giglio one time said something to the effect of he wonders if maybe a reason that God commanded the Sabbath is so that we would make ourselves stop trying to make everything happen and still see that God's making it happen. And so that's a crucial practice, is taking pauses and then pushing your mind and heart to trust that God's going to take care of this.
Man, that is a dense section there, worth going back and listening to several times over and saying, okay, here's a couple things I can pull out of that.
It's been crucial for sure for
There's
me.
a lot in there. I love that. Thanks for sharing so many helpful tips there. It's awesome.
And I think when that gets off the rails, you had so many great points about how to keep this in balance and keep it in check. Burnout is the mental health symptom that people might start noticing, and apathy and irritability or showing up late or doing more careless work, not doing their best work. And that's an opportunity to audit. If I'm noticing some mental health symptoms, what's going on the vocational side? And taking note of some of those tips. Taking a break without taking note of those things is probably not going to be helpful, though. You'll just come back to burnout.
That's right.
Place.
Yes.
Man, that's very helpful.
That's right.
Awesome. Okay, last but certainly not least, number 10 here.
And that's Bible rhythms. And that's because we want to be grounded in truth. If our goal is to be grounded in our emotions and regulated in our emotions and to have wellness, then we have to go back to our roots. And oftentimes that's difficult for people if they're coming out of a season where, again, they've been through something traumatic, or they've just been distant from God, or their theology is a bit off the rails, then maybe it's something they've never done. So where do we start some of those rhythms? I think starting with other people, again, you hit more than one bucket. I think that's helpful. And there's so many great resources out there. There's some great things on YouVersion. Like right now, I've decided I wanted to do a deeper dive. And I'm going through the Bible recap with Tara Lee Cole. Was great.
Excellent.
It's so good. And then I added a group of 10 ladies to we're on a text thread. And once a month we get together and talk about the highlights of that. And so something like that is great. There's going to be lots and lots of different ways to get there. But I think just taking that next step, knowing it's not going to return void. It is going to be the thing that is most grounding to you.
Yeah, that's excellent. Now, I'm gonna also force you to talk about something that you may not want to talk about here, which is you've done some resourcing in some of this space with Scripture, and would love to hear you kind of mention some of that and plug some of that if you're willing.
Yeah. So in partnership with the American Association of Christian Counselors, I published a devotional that integrates mental health care for this very purpose, because it really is such an important part of our emotional mental health. So there's a devotional. It's a 60-day journey.
Okay.
So it's designed to build in the auditing that we're talking about and to build in the rhythms of resilience. And every day is a focus on a scripture through a mental health lens. Every day is a mental health tool, and it's covering every bucket on that list of 6. So something like that, I guess a shameless plug, I do recommend for people, because it builds some of that rhythm. It builds some of the muscles that we need. And hopefully it gives some tools that might have the opportunity to practice at the same time.
Well, we will put a link to that in our show notes on YouTube and wherever you're listening, because I think that'd be a helpful thing for a lot of people. That's great. Yeah. Anything to add there on the Bible rhythm stuff?
I'll add on the evaluation thing, just a simple thing. You could put a reminder on your calendar every 3 months on a scale of 1 to 10. How are you doing on all these different buckets? A little more daring thing could be ask close guys in your life, or for ladies, ask the close ladies, how am I doing on these things? That's where the iron sharpens iron comes in. And just keep the word coming in your brain. Reading, listening, memorizing, all that. It's huge. Yeah, man, that's incredibly helpful. I want to make sure I honor y'all's time. You've given so many helpful, practical, thoughtful things for our people. Thank you both so much for carving out the time. I know you guys have full schedules. You have a lot going on. So the fact that you would take the time to invest in our people like this, I think is worthy of praise. And so I want to say thank you guys so much. And if you're listening, this is one of those episodes among a lot of the other ones where it's good to just maybe go back over and over again, because there's going to be new things that you're like, oh, I missed that the first time, or there was so much that this is the thing I came away with, and then go back to it again and find something else there. So I think there's going to be a lot of helpful things for you listening and watching. Thank you for the time, for jumping on today, and we cannot wait to see you guys soon at church and on this journey with us as we enter the fall. We're so grateful you're with us. Thanks for watching today. As always, you are loved and sent.